Okay, back at it with more part two, I guess you would say, of the Q&A that you guys kind of impromptued me towards here. And again, that's my fault. I apologize. I'm still learning these kind of things. I didn't think, one, that I would get this many questions, and two, what's the point of having a live stream if I'm going to ignore you in the chat or whatnot? So I want to leave those questions for the chat, but I didn't want to ignore these questions since so many people obviously wanted to know some answers. So let's continue now. S. Great name. Which books have had the biggest impact on your life? This one is very easy. I think it's pretty obvious to non-new viewers, and that would be Dune. I felt like Dune is a book that had so many themes and ideas that resonated with me that it changed the entire way that I looked at life. And you hear people all the time like, oh, that book was great, it changed my life. They don't mean it. I mean it. And when we get closer to the movie, I'm going to actually talk about these things, exactly why I feel the way I do, because I don't want to spend 20 minutes talking about it right now. But Dune very much changed the way that I looked at everything in my life, namely fear. Fear is the mind killer, right? So I will definitely be talking more about Dune in the future, but yeah, Dune definitely changed the way I looked at everything, man. Peanut butter jelly man. You know my kids all the time. Peanut butter jelly time. Anybody got kids that sing that? All right. My kids are weird. Would you consider doing in-depth reviews for every single one of Michael Crichton's books like you were doing with Stephen King's Multiverse? I don't know, because I'd have to reread those. A lot of those I haven't read since I was a teenager, and I don't see that on the schedule anytime soon. I mean, if this channel goes years from now, maybe. I know that I would definitely want to talk about a few individual reviews of some of my more favorite Michael Crichton books, but I could think of about 15 to 17 of them I'd love to talk about in depth for sure. But yeah, doing it kind of like I'm doing the multiverse, I don't know. If I'm doing one Stephen King book a month, I mean, that's going to take a few years right there. So I don't know. It's a good question. It's something I'll have to think about, because yeah, he's a top 5 author all time for me, and there's definitely enough content to do it. Let's see here. Harry Pappas. You guys really have great screen names. Has your top 10 list changed since finishing The Wheel of Time? Now, see, the thing with me in my favorite fantasy series, that top 10 video I did, is something like top 10 for me takes legacy, and legacy takes time. You know, obviously, Wheel of Time being as high as it was number 7 on that list. Where it was, and I wasn't even done with it, that is very much a high compliment, I think. I feel like my top 3 to 5 is kind of locked right now, so it'd be hard to kind of get in there. But like I said, I definitely think that the arrow is pointing up on Wheel of Time, and it's something that I'm going to appreciate even more as time goes by, and I appreciate it plenty now, regardless of what some of the nasty commenters think. But right now, no. Right now, it's I feel good about where it's at. But obviously, you look at the money I spent on the hardcovers. I've got a wall print of Wheel of Time. I've done 50 videos of Wheel of Time on my channel. Obviously, it's important to me. So it's something that obviously, it matters. It matters. But as of right now, no. But those lists change over time. But it does take, legacy does take some time. It really does. So right now, I feel like it's still too soon. Too soon. Andy and Alex ask, are you going to finish the Demon Cycle? I never meant to take as long of a break on the Demon Cycle as I did. I just keep letting myself get suckered in by new series. That's my problem. And that's one of the things I've tried to change the last year or so of run this channel. But it's one of those things that just, it wasn't intentional. I loved the first 2 books. 3 was the first one I didn't go crazy for. But yeah, I'm going to finish it. I don't have a problem with the series at all. So I'll definitely be finishing it, but I just don't have a date right now. I'd like to think I got a couple series on the back burner here that I've got kind of in my queue up next. But I think that those are such quick reads that I probably could just kind of throw those in there sometime this fall. While I'm waiting for Stormlight 4, or if I finish Stormlight 4. Stormlight 4 is going to be like 9,000 pages, so I don't even know if I'll be able to finish that before Christmas. We'll see. But yeah, sometime this year I'd like to finish books 4 and 5 of Demon Cycle. Weirin of Bly. I love all you First Law fans out there. Who would win at a duel and why? Who would win at a duel and why between Gorst and Logan? And what is your favorite Bloody Nine transformation scene? If I've got Logan standing up against Lan from Wheel of Time, I'm thinking he's going to beat Gorst. Gorse obviously is unmatched with the blade, but I just feel like Logan would find a way around that somehow. He always does. I know it sounds like a chicken shit answer again. It's just, I don't see how Logan loses. He's like the freaking Hulk. He just smashes. He finds a way to live through everything and ends up on top. So I would say Logan, but it would not be easy. As far as his favorite transformation scene, it's got to be versus Fenris the Feared in Last Argument of Kings. So good. So good. Marco Vukman, what is something that you would like fantasy authors to explore more in their books? And do you know of any books that mix in fantasy with horror? I'd like to see less info dumps. I've talked about that before. Less world building and more character work. So many people have gotten obsessed with their prose and their lore and their world building now that they forgot characters drive your story. And I feel like if your characters are great, the world building is just going to kind of happen naturally. Like I've talked about my Dresden Files videos recently. You love the characters, and you know what? The universe has just been built slowly but perfectly through the first 11 books. So I feel like more authors should focus on that. I'd also like if they stop putting 21st century ideals in books that are based off of like 14th century medieval Europe. I think that that's not doing anybody favors, and it just kind of basically, when you put modern day thought into the fantasy story, it takes me out of it, and I want immersion in my fantasy stories. So I would like to see less of that, but I just feel like that's where we are right now, and that's just like the thing. If you enjoy that, like I always say, that's awesome. I'm just not a fan of allegory in my stories. So I'd like to see less of that. Ryan 6D2, what is the most underrated fantasy and science fiction book? It's probably going to sound like recency bias, but I've got to say this Faithful and the Fallen series I'm reading right now by John Gwynne. These books are incredible. How are these not like huge within the fantasy community? I don't even understand. I'm on book 3 right now, and I'm like, if this continues to get better, this is going to be it's going to be high up on my fantasy list because it is really, really good. I don't understand how more people don't know about this. It makes no sense. Makes no sense. These are every bit as good as any other modern fantasy series out right now. And the man writes. He writes fast. He's wrote like I think 7.5 books in 7 books in 7.5 years, and they're huge. So he's got 2 series complete right now. Finishing Faithful and the Fallen right now. I want to start Blood and Bone next. But it's wonderful, and I feel like no one talks about it. I know I've got a lot of people on the channel and the Discord to check them out based off of my feedback. And everyone that's reading it has kind of said the same thing. How have I not known about this? So, definitely Faithful and Fallen seems like it's very, very underrated. And I hope that's not just recency bias. Like I said, it's the best I've read in a couple of years, best fantasy series. So I'm having a blast with it, man. JJ Hunter asks, who are your favorite authors at this time? And what do you reckon each of their strengths are? Let's do one from like the past and the present. The past, obviously, is going to be J.R.R. Tolkien. His strength was his world building. No one did it better. I don't think anyone has created as rich and deep of a lore and universe as Tolkien did. I mean, that's why he is held in such high regard and considered the gold standard of fantasy. And I guess you'd say modern or recent. I mean, it seems weird because the guy's been writing for 40 years. But Stephen King will always be my favorite. And I definitely think that his strength is the coming-of-age story. I feel like him and Joss Whedon are like the only ones who ever get how kids talk to one another. You see all these things where you got like a 40-something, 50-something-year-old author, and they're writing kids, and you're like, kids don't say that kind of stuff to each other. I felt like those two have always been able to really get the banter down with children, and no one gets the coming-of-age story quite like Stephen King, and that is something that has always made me love his books, is he understands how to write kids. It's really good. And what's scarier than having kids in a horror situation, right? So that's what I love about Mr. King. All right. Tomahawk Chop 76 says, have you read or plan on reading any of the new Thrawn books written by Timothy Zahn? And you're meaning in the new Star Wars. I saw what they did to Thrawn on Rebels, and to me it felt like a very hollow version of the character and not the one. Just the badass that was right up there with Darth freaking Vader as far as like a great villain in the series. I no, I didn't read them. I don't intend to. I'm just so checked out on the new Disney Star Wars that I just have no interest. Not even Timothy Zahn, because I really just feel like he's over a barrel. What's he going to do? He wants to keep writing Star Wars books, but they won't let him continue what he started in the original EU. So no, probably not. And I hate that, because I've said besides George Lucas and Dave Filoni, I don't feel like there's anybody who gets Star Wars more than Timothy Zahn. So probably not, because I don't like that version that the Thrawn that they made. He was not what I read, what they had on Rebels. So there we go. Danny Matson asks, have you read the perfect fantasy book, the one that hits all the things that you want or love in fantasy? Or are there always small little things that are missing that you think could make it better? I don't think there is a perfect book. I've said before that Dune is my favorite book of all time, followed closely by It by Stephen King. Both of them have huge problems that I've said that I can point out in them. I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect movie or a perfect book. There can be one that you can say you really, really loved. It's a 5 out of 5 or something like that. I can get behind that. But there's always, if you can't find anything to even nitpick in a book, I haven't found it yet. So no, there's been some that are very close, very, very close. But I would say no, I haven't ever had the perfect book. Giver Den asks, have your reading habits changed since starting a BookTube channel? Not really like the content or anything. I've always said I don't let the audience influence me what I'm going to read. I have got some comments recently about, I want you to do what you want to do, not what others want you to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll put up, like I did with the poll, these are series I plan on reading anyways. What I do is just give the viewers the option of deciding which one I want to read first. So have running a BookTube channel changed? Not like the content that I read per se, but trying to get more structured in my reading. I used to get like 10 series and read one book from one, then move to the next one, and keep doing that and just rotate them around. I'm trying to get more structured. That's why I tried setting my schedule with Dresden Files, tried setting my schedule with the Cosmere, tried setting a schedule of Wheel of Time, because I wanted to kind of help staying on task or things like that. So that, in that regard, yes. But as far as people that think that I had no plans or no interest to read something and I'm only reading it because viewers want me to, no. Viewers want me to do Gentleman Bastards 2 and 3, and I'm like, no. Viewers want me to do Wise Man's Fear, and I'm like, no. I'm not reading stuff I have no interest to read. So you can go ahead and forget that if that is a thought that's crossed your mind. So no, it hasn't really changed too much, except just trying to be more structured and keep to a schedule. Spiros Kamelelis, favorite horror books that aren't Stephen King or H.P. Lovecraft, and are you planning to insert more sci-fi on the channel? Bram Stoker's Dracula, Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House, and Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. Those are all three amazing horror books. I would recommend those to anyone, not just fans of horror. I think that you'll find something to really, really hit home with those three books right there. I want to read Clive Barker. I've never read Clive Barker. And if I never read Dean Koontz again, I'll be happy. There we go. KRS asks, what is the biggest inspiration in your life? And not necessarily books. Obviously, my answer is going to be my kids. Whole reason I went back to school, because my kids. Not to get too personal here, I grew up dirt poor, like dirt poor. If I was reading anything, it was being borrowed from my brother, who had borrowed it from his friends. I wanted, obviously, to give my kids a better life. We were doing okay, whatnot, but I said I want them to have things where they remember these awesome vacations. They grow up in a bigger house. They get to do things that I never thought possible as a kid. So yeah, that was the whole influence for me going back to school, was kids. Kids will change you, man. They really, really will. You can be the toughest nut to crack, and that baby opens up its eyes and looks at you for the first time. You're changed forever. So if it seems like an easy answer, yeah, it probably is. But that influenced everything that I have done in the last 8 years that they've been in my life. So there you go. Casey Westrope asks, do you like Rush? And if yes, what is your favorite album? The better question is, who doesn't like Rush? Bad people. That's who doesn't like Rush. Easily my favorite album is 2112. And do you know why? Because it is basically a sci-fi fantasy book in music form. Such incredible music. I know some people are like, oh, I just don't like Geddy Lee's voice. Don't care. Love it. Love it. I love Rush. Awesome. Rest in peace, Neil Peart. Best drummer ever. And it's not close. Not close. Brent Smith asks, there are so many series in fantasy and sci-fi. What are some of your favorite standalones? Warbreaker, which I just read this year, but he's going to end up making a sequel to that. We just know it. So that one won't last long. Princess Bride, Neverending Story. Those are a couple of the standalones that I like a lot. But God, it just seems like everything that comes out now, book one of a planned 8-book series, it's just standalones are dead, man. They really are. That's why I still cling to Stephen King, and I wish that Mr. Crichton was still with us. Let's see here. Ibby says, what is your favorite topping on pizza? Extra cheese, always, because you know why? Cheese is keto friendly. I mean, pizza isn't exactly keto friendly, but the cheese part is. Oh, you can never have a mouse when it comes to cheese. Give me all of the cheese. Steve Wrightson asks, what author or book surprised you the most, either how good it was or how much you were disappointed? Layup. Name of the Wind. Everyone kissed that book's ass and told me it was like the most incredible book they had read in 25 years, and I didn't get it. My unpopular opinion on Name of the Wind still gets nasty comments every single day. That's part of having an unpopular opinion. It's unpopular for a reason. I won't say that I thought it was trash or bad. I was just disappointed with it. I didn't really get it. One that I was really just disappointed with was Lies of Locke Lamora, because from everything I heard, that was just going to be everything I was looking for. And you can watch that review. Again, that's gotten the reputation as a book that I hated. I didn't. I thought it was fine. It's just the reputation that it has. I expected the world, and maybe that influenced me. I don't know. I always feel like I set my expectations. I call it the Prequel Rule. If you know what the Prequel Rule is when the Star Wars prequels came out, never entered my mind at one time that they were going to be a letdown. Never. So now I always go and do everything with the Prequel Rules. Expect the worst, hope for the best. So I don't like to say, oh, well, you just had too high of expectations for something, and that's why you didn't like it. My problems with Lies of Locke Lamora were all structure-based. I've already talked about this, so watch that review if you want to know more. But yeah, those are 2 books I think that really just surprised me at how disappointed I was with them. As far as ones that surprised me how good they were, I don't know. I'll have to come back to that. I feel like everything that has been really good, I've expected good things from. Do you read your FBI agent? Watch out, y'all. Do you read nonfiction? If so, what nonfiction books are your favorite? The only nonfiction I read are biographies, and I usually do those on musical artists. I love a good biography on a band. Again, second Motley. This is completely coincidental. Motley Crue's biography, The Dirt. The most fun I've ever had reading a book. I'm not even gonna lie. So if it's nonfiction, usually it's I want to know someone's life story, and I tend to feel like rock artists have the best life stories because sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's good stuff. Bill Bofker. That sounds like a Tolkien character. Will you ever get super tall bookshelves and a ladder on wheels? The ceiling is really not high enough to need that. I'm 6'1". I can touch the ceiling, so I don't really need that. I think the plans are right now is when the kids are gone someday is to turn their current game room, which has a little bit of vaulted ceilings, maybe turn that into our library. So maybe then we can do it. But as of right now, no, I wouldn't need a ladder. But goals, right? And the second question is, which video game you've played was the most immersive? Fallout 3, Skyrim, and Subnautica. If you guys haven't played Subnautica, I know a lot of people haven't heard of that one. You've heard of the other ones for sure. Subnautica. I am terrified of the ocean. Thalassophobia. That's a real thing. Terrified of it. So that game was not only really awesome survival exploration game, but it was straight up horror to me too. So check that game out if you haven't. Amazing game, Subnautica. It's like $10 on PC. It's amazing. Luis D. Santos asks, how's your preferred method or ambiance when reading? For example, do you read and listen to a book, like listening while commuting and resume reading at the evening? And also, do you listen to music while reading? I've talked very, very, very much about how I can't do audiobooks. I don't look down on anybody who reads audiobooks. What do you want to call it? Hey, you're digesting a story on your terms. That's great. Do what you want. I am not an ADD reader, but I am an ADD listener. I just don't retain anything. And I already get enough comments on this channel about how, oh, how'd you miss that detail? You know? So the last thing I'm going to do is listen to the book and miss key details, not understand character names, cities, locations, regions, species, things like that, because I'm not going to actually pick things up that way. So no, I do not do that. I read all my stuff. But when it comes to music, yes, absolutely. I love movie soundtracks and TV soundtracks that I use for reading. And I have like a special playlist that I have for different methods of books. Like I've been listening to a lot of the dark soundtrack while reading Stephen King. Listen to, Conan. I listen to Braveheart, things like that while reading certain books. So it's, there's plenty of music out there that I like to listen to. A lot of game soundtracks too. So I can hook you up with some of those playlists if you want. What's next? Chief Hand Grenade says, what are some books and movies or shows that you think are great fun and have fun watching and reading anyway? Really think there's any books that I think that are considered bad that I love, but there are plenty of movies that are considered bad. I love some awesome bad movies. Big Trouble in Little China, Roadhouse, Point Break, Maximum Overdrive. There's plenty of stuff there. I know a lot of people consider Supernatural bad TV, but God, I love it. It's just Buffy, Angel on a X-Files scale. Sure. So if you consider those bad, I like them. My buddy Armin, what is the first fantasy book you ever read? The Hobbit. Obviously, Hobbit is going to kind of take the cake there. If you don't want to count The Hobbit because it's such an easy answer, the Shannara trilogy, the sort of short Shannara trilogy, that was it. That was, to me, at the time as a preteen, right after Lord of the Rings, I was like, oh, I don't care if it's ripping off Lord of the Rings. I just want more Lord of the Rings. I didn't really care. I feel like that's something if I tried to revisit now, I'd probably just be like, what are you doing? Right? Hardcover, this is from Ethan Cranford. Hardcover or paperback? Bro, hardcover. I've come around a little bit on trade paperbacks, though. Natalia Samuel asks, I want to get into Stephen King, but I don't like horror. Which Stephen King books would you recommend to a scaredy cat? 11/22/63, The Dead Zone, The Stand, Gerald's Game, Dolores Claiborne, Apt Pupil, The Body, Rita Hayworth, and The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile. So basically just the different seasons. Short story collection is a great place to start. It's got 4 stories in it. Really, really good. None of them are particularly scary. Yes, he has the Master of Horror moniker, and that is obviously his forte, but some of his best books have been dramas. And hell, 11/22/63, that's a time travel love story. I think that you'd get down on that one, even if it is that big. There's plenty of good stuff out there. Don't be worried about being scared. I just did my review for The Dead Zone, so check that out. Maybe that'll be something you'll be interested in. Angela McAllister, I am currently reading The Demon Cycle by Peter V. Brett. You said in one of your recent videos that you really liked the first 2 books, but not the third, and you haven't read the final 2. What was it about the third book? Did I come off as saying I didn't like it? I think what it was, like I said, was the first one that I just didn't, kind of lose myself in. And I think the problem with it was, I think Peter V. Brett was maybe super horny when he wrote that book, because every 40 pages it seemed like it was turning into an erotica novel. I don't mind a good sex scene in a book, but I've said I feel like the forte with male fantasy authors is not sex scenes, and he just couldn't help himself in that book. So I still enjoyed the book very much, very, very much. And I'm going to continue the series. That's not why I slowed down or anything. It just kind of got lost in the shuffle. But I'll get to it. But no, I enjoyed the book. I just like the first 2 much better. And the last question, Eddie Castro. You always mention Shannara. And the last book, I believe, comes out end of this year. So how far have you read? I want to say it was the Heritage books, which wasn't that far into it. I think it was Elf Queen of Shannara or something. I don't know. It was like almost 30 years ago, so I can't really recall. It was a series that I liked a lot when I was younger, and then the closer I got to a teenager, it wasn't really clicking for me anymore. So I don't really have any other feedback from there. But guys, the feedback from me is thank you so much for these questions. I hope I can get a lot of new ones in the live chat. We're going to be doing the 10K live chat this weekend. So thank you guys so much. We reached 10K. I can't believe it. That's like a small soccer game or something now. So that's a great audience, and I appreciate you guys, and I hope I can continue to make you feel like you are part of the channel. So thank you guys so much. Maybe I'll do this Q&A thing more often if it's received really well. So thank you guys for watching, for asking the questions, and I hope I will see you at the live chat this weekend. Have a great week.